You want to know why the Muslim faith has had its advancements? It's because the Muslims were willing to die for their belief. They were willing to strap bombs to their chest. They believed in the afterlife. God, give us some men and women that'll get a hold of some passion in their spirit that says, I will lay down my life for the gospel.
So this is Pastor Kent Christmas. He's a televangelist, an extremist, obviously. He just said he believes that Christians should be as extreme as Muslim terrorists. That's what he said. That's what he believes. That is unglued from reality. Now, in this specific clip, he's talking about adults, presumably, right? But I have a number of other clips from other people that was said recently and not so recently, endorsing the idea that children should be indoctrinated to that degree. So let's talk about it. And as a guest to help me talk about it, I'm going to bring in my kid, AlphaForceZero. Welcome, AlphaForceZero. Do you want to say hi?
Hi.
Yeah, anyway. Welcome. So yeah, we're going to talk about it. And actually, we're going to talk about like AlphaForceZero's experience with childhood indoctrination. Quick interjection. I won't take long. I just wanted to tell you guys, YouTube's algorithm operates off of a few factors. Watch time, whether or not you subscribe, and whether or not you like something. So if you really want to help my channel, I would appreciate it if you guys watch the video to the end. If you don't watch it to the end, just watch a little bit longer than you would have otherwise. I would appreciate that very much. All right, let's get back to the video. Interestingly enough, this has been happening for a while. This is from June 13th, 2023. It's not much earlier than the Kent Christmas clip came out. Check this out. Gene Bailey on a TV show called Flashpoint. It's owned and operated by Kenneth Copeland, and it is a Trump extremist group that runs this show, that hosts it. They do everything they do is for Donald Trump. It's insane. So check this clip out. June 13th, 2023. They said something similar to Kent Christmas. The Kent Christmas clip, by the way, is blowing up right now. These other ones, these other clips are less known, but probably have more visibility to a broader society, a broader world than Kent Christmas does.
All right, I want to say one more time, you guys need to be involved in Flashpoint. You need to get on the email list. Go sign up at govictory.com/FP sign up.
I was watching this at the end. You know, this is the end of the video, and he's coming in, he's plugging his stuff, right? So go to their website and sign up.
Be a part of the Army. You say, well, what is the Army? It sounds like a militant group. We are exactly that. We are militant. We're not picking up arms and storming the Capitol yet.
Yet. You hear that? He says yet. So it seems like something he's interested in doing. I mean, they already did do that on January 6th, right? That is psychotic. Any thoughts, AlphaForceZero?
I was attempting to drink and he said yet. That's insane. And they're like considering themselves an army, a militant group. And he's saying, oh yeah, we haven't gotten anything yet. That is insane.
It is insane. It's sad that it's become so normalized in society, seems to me. I mean, Kent Christmas, like I said, this clip blew up, but the Gene Bailey clip is newer and it's not like getting any attention. I just wish that, attention would stay on this stuff and people would be aware of what's happening right now, because it is deeply disturbing. Keep listening here.
But we are standing up and saying we are going to do everything within the legal bounds of our authority as American citizens, while we still have a Constitution, to stand up and say this is not acceptable. This goes against what is legal, what is right, and what we are here for.
So he goes on to talk about how persecuted they are as Christians, because, Christians are so persecuted in the United States, so mistreated, those poor Christians, and that you have to stand up and fight against your ideological enemies because you're so persecuted. They're using it as like the basis, the premise for extreme action. But listen to this clip from Gene Bailey, same guy, just a few months before, February 14th, 2023. He goes out on air, he's talking to Hank Kunneman here, and he says this.
When we look back on Hitler went for the youth. The enemy always goes for the youth. We must take up arms and go for our youth arms of the truth and of godly principles. But
so they are openly advocating for not just extremist action. They want to be as extreme as Muslim terrorists, people who they spoke very negatively about, by the way, and over the past 20 years, especially after 9/11. There was absolute public outrage over religious fundamentalism, but they didn't turn that eye inward. So, as it turns out, interestingly enough, people have been doing this for a while. There's this documentary called Jesus Camp that's all about indoctrinating children. I wanted to ask AlphaForceZero, do you feel like you were indoctrinated in any way when you were a kid by anybody, by me or grandma or anybody?
I don't know about indoctrinated, but I can definitely say grandma tried really, really hard. With you always just said that it didn't really matter what I thought or what I believed in anyway, so that kind of gave me freedom to, you also taught me different things that would help me understand why stuff that was going on at my church or stuff that was going on at the Kingdom Hall, why those just kind of ended up seeming idiotic, to say the least.
Right, because you went to church when you were little, right? You went with your, not like my mom, not Jehovah's Witness Church. Well, you did go to Jehovah's Witness Church, but not really. But you're pointing to your other grandmother, right?
Yeah, that's her obituary.
Yeah, I talked about it not too long ago. She died. Rest in peace. But anyways, yeah. So she took you to church, but it wasn't like a hateful church, right? It was like a moderate.
With the church that we went to, they didn't force anything on us, really. They also didn't teach us, oh, this group is bad and this group is good and these people are going to hell and these people are not. They just kind of said...
I mean, heck. Go on. I'm just kidding. Go on.
They just kind of said, oh yeah, Jesus died for us and believe that because that's good. But with the Kingdom Hall grandma,
my mom.
Yeah, Dad's mom, she would bring me there and be like, your dad so sadly isn't going to go to heaven, and I'm really torn up about that.
Well, isn't going to make it to paradise. She believes in paradise.
Yeah, but yeah, she did just constantly talk about how she was so torn up about it and how she doesn't want that for me, and she hopes that I'll choose what's right and I can make it into paradise. I can get to paradise and stuff.
Yeah, there was a time, I remember when you were little, here's the thing about Jehovah's Witnesses. They are absolutely desperate to convince everybody around that they have the true religion, that it's real. They'll do absolutely anything. I mean, it's not a normal Christian religion. It goes beyond that, a step past. So, of course, my mom's trying to indoctrinate AlphaForceZero. Maybe not even realize, but... she's talking to her about it and saying, I hope you join the religion. I hope you want to be a part of this. Bring her to the Kingdom Hall occasionally. I didn't let her take her all the time, although when she was very little, I actually wanted her to be a Jehovah's Witness. I still believed in it. So I allowed her to take her to the Kingdom Hall and teach her the Jehovah's Witness stuff when she's 4, 5, or something like that. It wasn't until later that I realized how deeply damaging Jehovah's Witnesses are, and I put a stop to it. But I remember about 7 years old, AlphaForceZero came back from... By the way, do you want to say your real name?
My name is Kylie.
There we go. Okay. I'm just going to go with that. So Kylie said, when she's about 7, Kylie comes home and says that she wants to get baptized. Came home from my mom's. Are you raising your hand? You don't have to raise your hand. It can be a conversation. Go ahead.
So the first thing that you learn in school is you have to raise your hand to ask a question. That's a deterrent. That's actually teaching you viscerally, because you embody it, don't ask. That actually eventually becomes trust the expert.
If anyone here has watched the first video that I was in with Dad, that was just kind of like a full circle. I just realized what I did.
It is. That's funny. Long and long ago. That phrase is from Deathstalker, by the way, one of my favorite books. Anyways, long and long ago, the first video that I ever got her in, I think that's my most popular, most viewed video. It has like 1.2 million views on it or something. And it's like just a couple minutes long, and it's me introducing her as AlphaForceZero just because I wanted to come up with a fake name and I didn't have a good one. And, you know, in the background, she yells, "My name's Kylie." Of course, it was a scripted joke, but we have come full circle, I suppose, haven't we? That's pretty good. Anyway, so as I was saying, my mom tried to brainwash Kylie. Now, it obviously didn't stick, but I remember her coming home and saying she wanted to get baptized as a Jehovah's Witness just because she wanted to be baptized. That's it. There wasn't like a strong feeling. So I felt like I had to counter it. What do you think?
I remember this too. I remember exactly why. So Grandma had taken me to I can't remember what it's called anymore, but like it was one of the convention.
Oh yeah, the district convention or something, the assembly.
Yeah, the assembly. So I actually have pictures from it in a scrapbook from that exact assembly because I remember it so vividly. I remember people were like, they were getting dunked into the pool to be baptized, and I asked Grandma like what was happening, and she's like, "Oh yeah, they're getting baptized. You know, if you get baptized, you get to be dunked in a pool." During one of the meetings, during like an assembly in front of everyone. I was like, "Oh, that's so cool. I wanna do that." And then
Yeah, not even realizing or not, you know, my mom was not explaining that you were effectively signing a verbal contract with this organization to give them your time and energy and money and attention for the rest of your life. And if you don't, you will lose everybody you ever knew or loved. So I started taking countermeasures to try to deprogram her to the best of my ability and said, I got aggressive. I was like, you know, you wouldn't be allowed to talk to me anymore if you became a Jehovah's Witness. That would be a part of getting baptized. You want to get baptized, you can do it at Mama D's church, but not at the Kingdom Hall because it's a toxic, destructive place to be, you know? And I can tell you remember this conversation.
yeah, I remember.
I think you were 7, right? That's how you were 7. I remember you were 7.
I remember every single like detail because I remember I was sitting there. I don't remember exactly where we were.
We were in the basement at Mama Sue's.
I remember saying, yeah, that I wanted to get baptized, and you were like, no, you can't get baptized because you wouldn't be able to talk to me. And I was like, but I want to get dunked in a pool at a meeting. And that's when you said that I could do that at Mama D's church eventually. I was like, well, do they do that too? And you told me that they did, and that if I wanted to get baptized, I could do it there. Otherwise, I wouldn't be allowed to talk to you.
Yeah, pretty much every Christian denomination, I think it's fair to say every Christian denomination has baptism, right? Well, anyways, so I took aggressive deprogramming techniques, not just that, but started teaching critical thinking skills heavily, like the difference between not true and false, and started pointing out inconsistencies in Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff. I had never done any of that stuff before, really, up until that moment, and that's when I realized I had to take steps to prevent this from happening. So anyways, that's AlphaForceZero's, or that's Kylie's experience with childhood indoctrination. What is it?
I also remember after you did all of that and after you explained all of that, I remember, I think probably it might have been a year. It was either when I was 8 or 9. I went to Mama D's church, and I remember sitting there. I think I was probably 9. I remember sitting there and like watching a video, and I remember the exact video too. It was one of the videos that they showed us. I was like, that's not physically possible though. And I raised my hand and I said to our teacher, I was like, hey, that's not physically possible. How did that happen?
What was it, like Jesus coming back from the dead
No,
or something?
it was, they were in a desert, and there was just randomly a tree, and there was like the water that would make them all sick, and God was like, hey man, cut down this tree and throw it in the water and everything's fine.
I don't remember that part of the Bible. That's weird. Okay.
I remember I raised my hand and I was like, hey, how did they cut down the tree? They're in a desert. They have no tools. They've been walking for an insane amount of time, and you know all of that stuff would be very heavy. If they did have tools, they would have brought water, something with them. They would have brought food. they don't have any food. They haven't eaten in days. And he's like, no, but God gave them, like, they could carve, like, they could make tools out of the wood and out of the stone. I'm sure they had something. And I was like, but that would have been way too heavy for them. And he's like, no, God gave them the power. And he just, like, he just stopped. Like, I kept raising my hand over and over because if I didn't, I'd get in trouble. And he just stopped calling on me.
Oh, that's funny.
Again. Yeah.
Well, here's a little fun fact that not everybody might be aware of. The Exodus from Egypt, if you remember the story, Moses, became like really influential in Egypt and then led the Jews out of Egypt into the wilderness. It was supposed to be a trek from Egypt to Israel, which is like a 2-week trip, actually. But they went the exact opposite direction and circled all of the African continent, supposedly, to travel for 40 years. It didn't actually happen. We know for a fact that this did not happen. There is zero evidence to show that this happened. Not a chariot wheel out of place, not a turban, nothing. This did not happen, this trek. This wandering around in the wilderness for 40 years is made up. So, anyways, not for nothing. Like, Moses wasn't even there to put a tree branch. In fact, Moses wasn't real. Moses was not actually a real person at all. And if you look into this a little bit further, it's pretty interesting. The Jews also didn't build the pyramids. I think there's a claim in Christianity that the Jews built pyramids. That did not happen. Happened like long before any kind of intermixing with Jews and Egyptians. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point here, the laborious point that I'm getting to, is that evangelicals, religious extremists, and others, Jehovah's Witnesses, they've been trying to brainwash children since the beginning.
When we look back on Hitler went for the youth. The enemy always goes for the youth. We must take up arms and go for our youth, arms of the truth and of godly principles. But
they're like this close to realizing that they are the enemy. They're this close to realizing that they're doing the thing that they're claiming the enemies are doing, right? Well, this isn't the first time by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, this happened in a 2006 documentary called Jesus Camp. Have you ever seen this documentary, Kylie? No?
I have not. I've heard of it, but I haven't actually seen it.
Okay, well, let me just play a couple of clips for you to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. Just a little bit of cultural context. At the time, George W. Bush had won his second election, was the president, second term in a row now, and lied us into a war with Iraq. And we were also in Afghanistan. Now, it's complicated because there was a lot of terrorism going on, and I totally get the need to up security and protect our country, but Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. That was just a blatant, flat-out lie. They even went to the UN and held up props, yellow cake uranium, and said, look, this is what Iraq has. They didn't. They never had weapons of mass destruction. Anyways, that was what was happening in 2006 when this documentary came out. Bush had already lied us into that war, and he was basically a lame duck. He's coming to the end of his term pretty soon in the next year, I think. And it was like a year and a half before the Great Recession hit. So listen to what this woman has to say here. Oh, and one more thing. I was in like 9th grade, basically. Yeah, I was in high school, I think, at this time. So it was like 3 more years before AlphaForceZero comes along, yeah.
I can go into a playground of kids that don't know anything about Christianity, lead them to the Lord in a matter of just no time at all. And just moments later, they can be seeing visions and hearing the voice of God because they're so open.
You catching this? Because they're so open. The intent has been to manipulate children's minds with the knowledge that they are more susceptible to it. Since 2006, that's been the goal, okay? We're hearing it straight from this camp leader's lips. This is Becky, and she ran an evangelical summer camp, basically, designed to turn your child into an extremist. That was kind of the goal. By the way, if you have something to say, AlphaForceZero, then just unmute and say it anytime, okay?
They are so usable in Christianity.
They're so usable. They have a vested interest in using children to their advantage. I mean, is this not like depraved? You know, the thing about this is, in any other context, any other situation, this would be illegal. This kind of behavior would be against the law, and these people would be charged with a crime for manipulating kids, taking advantage of them, for using them, child labor. How many countless hours I spent knocking on doors when I was little, and nothing happens because it's a religion. Sorry, go ahead.
She just outright admits that she's using them. And like a few minutes ago, or like a minute or two ago, she said that because they're so open, they can be hearing the voice of God. Like, yeah, when I was 5, because I was so open, I could also be jumping off of a building if my friends told me that it would be perfectly safe and I'd be fine, because children just believe whatever they hear. If you say to a kid, you know, your inner thoughts right now, because there are some people that don't have this, but majority of the population can like hear themselves.
Inner monologue is what you're talking about. Yeah, some people don't have that. It's very uncommon though. Yeah.
If you just said, you know, that your inner monologue is actually the voice of God, a 5-year-old's going to believe that because they're 5 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is why it should be illegal what they're doing to kids, you know? But in, like I said, any other context, it would be illegal. But they're given extra leeway, given extra room, given extra advantages in this area because they're a religion. And that leads to absolute corruption in religion because the scumbags float to the top. They're looking for an opportunity to take advantage of somebody. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there's something called the Genesis 2 Church, a.k.a. the Bleach Church. Have you ever heard of this? The people that drink bleach?
No.
Okay. Okay, well, there's a church out there called the Genesis 2 Church, and their whole thing is drinking bleach. He has this MMS, mineral something solution is what it's called. I forget the exact name. And it's effectively bleach. It's chlorine dioxide or something. It's very, very close chemically. And when it metabolizes in your system, it turns into bleach. And he was selling this stuff as a cure for cancer and, you know, AIDS and whatever, everything. It cures everything. Cures any ailment. And he got in trouble for that because, you know, that's wrong. That's illegal. That's evil. You're taking advantage of people, lying to them, vulnerable people in vulnerable places in their lives. But all he had to do was name it a religion, and suddenly he's free. He can do what he wants.
It's not physically safe. I have no idea how people, like, I understand that they're worried and they just want any cure that they can get, but it's also bleach.
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly enough, the guy's name is, I think, Mark Grennan, the leader of this bleach church, and he actually did get in a lot of trouble for this. He's in jail now. He was ordered to stop selling this bleach solution, MMS. So, you know, there are lines with religions, but they are pretty far. But he was writing into the White House when Donald Trump was president, writing, sending letters about this mineral solution, this bleach, that if you just drink this, it cures COVID. That's what he was claiming. Falsely, of course. And, you know, not long after that, Trump comes out and says they're looking very strongly into bleach.
I actually remember that. I don't know if I remember when it happened, but I definitely remember people talking about it, and, like, I remember you talking about it too, on, like, just Trump talking about using bleach to get rid of COVID and stuff. And it was
absolutely
just insane.
Absurd. Absolutely absurd. So anyways, the point here is religion has a lot of leeway to do whatever they want that other people don't have. You know, they don't even have to file taxes. Like, as a non-profit organization, you have to tell the government what you did with your money. You don't have to pay, but you have to tell them what you did with it. Churches don't. Churches don't have to say a word. You are tax exempt automatically if you're a church. You don't have to file for anything. You don't have to do anything. You're home free as a church. That is entirely too much leeway. So, anyways, yeah, they take advantage of kids, and in my opinion, this would be illegal in other contexts. But since it's a church, they get away with it, you know?
If you look at the world's population, 1/3 of that 6.7 billion people are...
So they're showing a kid convulsing, like I think he's doing what's called, he's falling out in the spirit. Basically, you fall on the ground and either pass out or convulse in a seizure type thing because the spirit overtook you with whatever, zeal or whatever the hell you want to call it. It's just another example of kids being susceptible to the messaging they're being given.
If you look at the world's population, 1/3 of that 6.7 billion people are children under the age of 15.
By the way, don't trust a single stat out of this, a single anything, even if it sounds right. Look literally everything up. Okay, don't trust a word out of it. So she's saying 1/3 of the people in 2006 on planet Earth were under 15. I don't know if that's true or not, but let's just, for the sake of argument, let's go with what she's saying here.
1/3. Where should we be putting our efforts? Where should we be putting our focus? I'll tell you where our enemies are putting it. They're putting it on the kids.
What enemies? Who's putting it, focus on kids? This is not happening anywhere except for in her head. These people need help desperately.
They're going into the schools. You go into Palestine, and I can take you to some websites that will absolutely shake you to your foundations and show you photographs of where they're taking their kids to camps like we take our kids to Bible camps.
Okay, so the Palestine-Israel thing, I'm not going to address it right now. It's very complicated. I feel like Israel's government is pretty far right-wing at this moment, and I'm not a fan of that. I wish that the Israeli government would move further to the left, and I think if they did, we'd have fewer problems like this, with this conflict. It would not be as pronounced and extreme as it is, but that's a discussion for another day.
Schools. You go into Palestine, and I can take you to some websites that will absolutely shake you to your foundations and show you photographs of where they're taking their kids to camps like we take our kids to Bible camps, and they're putting hand grenades in their hands. They're teaching them how to put on bomb belts. They're teaching them how to use rifles. They're teaching them how to use machine guns. It's no wonder, with that kind of intense training and discipling, that those young people are ready to kill themselves for the cause of Islam.
So she's pointing out that this is true. This does, or at least did happen a lot more often in the Middle East back in 2006. I'm sure it's probably happening still. It's just not as prominent in the news. Islam definitely does do that. I mean, some sects of Islam, sects, do this a lot. It's not good at all, right? Is that what she's trying to tell? This is evil? I mean, she was just talking negatively about Palestine, right?
I want to see young people who are as committed to the cause of Jesus Christ as the young people are to the cause of Islam.
Okay, so she apparently wasn't denouncing that? Is she saying it's simultaneously bad to do that to children if they're Muslim, but good if they're Christian?
She said there are people ready to die. And she said it in like a negative light based on everything else that she said directly before that. And then proceeded to say that it's a bad thing that they're not like that for Jesus as well.
Yeah.
She wants them, she doesn't want them to die for Islam, but then she does want them to die for Jesus.
Absolutely insane. And she gives her justification in a minute. Listen to what she says next.
I want to see them as radically laying down their lives for the gospel as they are over in Pakistan and in Israel and Palestine and all those different places, because we have, excuse me, but we have the truth.
Isn't that fascinating? Excuse me, but we have the truth. Everybody, every single extremist is convinced they have the truth. And you know what? They are so convinced that they have the truth that they are literally willing to die for it. They are probably more sure they have the truth than you are. That's what's so disturbing about this whole movement, about this situation. I don't want to just denounce beliefs or attack or criticize beliefs, that's easy. But criticizing principles and tactics is a lot harder. For example, back in 2019, there was a big push by Trump supporters to put these stickers all over gas pumps. They're Biden stickers, say, "I did that," points at the amount of money that the gas costs. And I denounced that tactic as wrong. It's illegal to do. They're vandalizing these gas pumps. This is private property, and they're committing vandalism to do this. Now, for the record, in Germany, the Nazi Party they started out with little things like that, little vandalisms. The brown shirts, Hitler's private army, the equivalent of the Proud Boys today. The brown shirts went around and did little things. They'd vandalize places. They would burn a building down, or they'd graffiti something, or they would spray paint Jew on the front of a store or something. It started with little things, little law breaking like that. And it ends poorly, right? When you kind of open the door to that type of activity, it ends badly. You're going down a bad road at that point, right? So I was walking through the subway stop not too long ago, and I saw some Jehovah's Witnesses standing there. And I got to thinking about this thing I saw on the XJW subreddit. There are these stickers that you can slap on the wall behind where Jehovah's Witnesses usually stand. It says things like, "Are you a Jehovah's Witness and things just don't make sense? Check out this ABC documentary on Jehovah's Witnesses," or "Go to the XJW subreddit," or whatever. There's another one, "Jehovah's Witnesses is the world's largest doomsday cult," things like that, right? But I have to wonder, is it moral for me to do that? It's the same tactic that we just heard Becky, or that we saw Trump supporters do back in 2019, leading up to the election. Same tactic, right? Stickers on walls and stuff. And I am very sure that I'm correct on the Jehovah's Witness issue. 100%. But so is Becky.
Different places, because we have, but we have the truth.
So that's why I feel like I have to denounce tactics rather than just beliefs. Now, as far as the sticker debate goes, I think it is moral to do the sticker thing, because gas pumps, that's vandalism and illegal. If it's on public property, it's free speech. You're perfectly allowed to do that. That's not against the law. So
I also think that you're saying with the Jehovah's Witness thing, it's like, hey, you can go to this subreddit right here, or you can go to this website and learn more about why you think this thing. I think that that's okay, once again, as long as it's not on gas pumps or something, or private property of any kind. And I don't support Trump in any way, but if I say one thing, I can't be a hypocrite and be like, oh, but it's not okay for the other side. So I think if you're putting a link to something and saying, hey, here's this thing, and it's not actively harming someone, I think that it would be okay, as long as it's not on gas pumps, private property, or anything like that.
Yeah, but so as long as it's not on gas pumps or private property. So does that mean that, what do you think about the little steps of vandalism that people took, back in the 1940s, well, really in the 1930s, leading up to World War II? They were doing little acts of vandalism to do what they needed to do. Do you think little acts of vandalism are justified like that, or what's it?
This feels like my U.S. history class. I think that little acts of vandalism, if it's not going to hurt anyone, which the Nazi Party did, if it's not saying this group is evil and deserves to die, which the Nazis did, which a lot of Trump supporters, not are necessarily doing, but they're placing the blame on someone and saying that this person's evil.
It's a hateful right-wing ideology, so.
If it's hate speech, I don't think it's okay. But I think if you're saying, hey, if you're feeling confused about this thing or this side, this view, here's something that we believe that you might believe too. And I think that can go for either side. So if they're not creating hate speech or a hateful environment or anything like that, and it's they're not causing damage to something that...
If they're not actually damaging property, you're saying then it's probably fine. Okay.
So if it's a sticker that can peel off easily and that's not actively in the way of things, and it's not creating a hateful environment, I think that it would be okay. Otherwise, I think that it's morally wrong and it's legally wrong too, because vandalism.
Yeah. I think it's complicated. I have come up with my own justifications for all this stuff, but you just drew guardrails on it, right? You just said it's okay in these specific scenarios, hate speech, no, right? And I agree, hate speech is wrong, but once again...
Excuse me, but we have the truth.
Everybody thinks they have the truth. They believe hate speech is helping society. They believe that demonizing, members of the LGBT community is improving society, bringing it back to its roots and making it a better place and all of that stuff. They think they're right, and we think we're right. Now, we are right. We do have the correct side, but they're saying the exact same words right now,
Well, yes, but also, no hate speech goes for either side, so you can't say Jehovah's Witnesses are evil and they're all gonna die, and I want to commit murder against them. But you can say, this group is harming someone, and if you agree with me, here's a helpful resource to get out of that group.
So you're drawing, there's, moral consistency is what you're saying.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right, well, check this out. I don't know if you guys know Mike Papantonio. Fantastic name, by the way. On point. Mike Papantonio is this guy right here. You can kind of see him in the background there a little bit. He did an interview with Becky on his radio show. I just want to listen to a minute or two of that. This is from the documentary Jesus Camp again.
We're talking to Becky in Bismarck, North Dakota. She's a children's pastor, and she runs a summer camp for evangelical children there in North Dakota. Becky, how are you?
I'm doing very good.
Why kids? Why are they supposed to be some new army of God? Why are we using kids to do that?
Anyone who does any work with kids knows is because the reason you go for kids is because whatever they learn by the time they're 7, 8, 9 years old is pretty well there for the rest of their lives. And this is statistics that you can research for yourself.
No, I know these statistics, but you use the term learn. The word learn is different than indoctrinate.
You could call it brainwashing, but I am radical and passionate in teaching children about their responsibility as Christians, as God-fearing people, as Americans, if you want to.
As Americans, you catch that? So that's her blurring the line between church and state. She's trying to kind of meld them into one thing, as Christians and as Americans, both. Fascinating.
This. How do we ignore that all of a sudden we're creating children's soldiers for the Republican Party? How does that figure into anything that Christ had to say about how we should live our life on the earth?
Yeah, how does that figure into anything Jesus said? Jesus was not like this. Jesus wasn't hateful and bigoted and angry and violent. He didn't hate anybody for anything. He didn't hate gay people. Didn't say a word about gay people. How is it that we've ended up on this other side of the issue now, 2,000 years later, and these people are justifying what they're doing as Christians, as followers of Jesus, by claiming that this is what Jesus would want?
And if you look at everything that they say Jesus is about, they'll say Jesus loves all. A lot of Christians' favorite quote is treat
Jesus
others how you
loves you.
want to be treated. Yeah, Jesus, treat others how you want to be treated. Jesus loves you. Love thy neighbor. And then they're spreading a lot of hate, saying that this is immoral, saying Jesus doesn't like this, Jesus doesn't like that, and a ton of other stuff. When one, it isn't specified. Two, even if it was specified, doesn't mean that Jesus would want you to hate these people, because he's all about love and love everyone and stuff like that. And they just constantly go against so many things. They constantly go against treating everyone equally and loving everyone equally.
The message that Jesus, by and large, stood for, right? Yeah, I mean, back in the day, 2,000 years ago when Jesus was around or whatever, if he was around, I think he's probably a real person, maybe, I think. Anyways, back when he was on Earth, the Jewish religion was so dramatically different from the religion that Jesus was trying to form out. It's like the difference between Christianity and Scientology today. That's how dramatically different the two are. The God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament are, they claim that it's the same God, but it is so radically different. The similarities between the two are almost non-existent. One is hateful and vengeful and angry and wants to kill and destroy, genocide these people, genocide those people. And then the New Testament God, the one that Jesus described, loves everybody, takes care of people, wants you to be okay, not to suffer, hates the rich, by the way, can't stand the rich, says that if you are rich, you have a camel has a better eye fitting through the eye of, a camel has a better chance fitting through the eye of a needle than a rich person has to get into heaven. It's just a completely different God. So anyway, kind of interesting. Do you have any parting thoughts before we get out of here?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. It was nice to be back on again after so long.
Yeah, definitely. It was good to have you on. These people need help. These people are doing everything they can to propagandize to children, to brainwash children, to take advantage of them, to take control of them.
Yeah, and she admits that children are easier to manipulate.
Easy targets, yeah. And why are they doing that?
When we look back on Hitler went for the youth. The enemy always goes for the youth. We must take up arms and go for our youth, arms of the truth and of godly principles. But
they're doing that because they believe they have the truth and they want to brainwash children. They want to do anything that they can to take control, to take political control, and to take control of people's minds. Anything they can. It's an ends justify the means mentality, which means here's the end. Here's what I want. Here's what I try to accomplish. I want everybody to get into heaven. And the means by which I'm going to do that are justified by that end. So my goal is to get everybody into heaven. That means anything that I do, literally anything, is justified to that end because this is people's eternal souls, When you get somebody into a position where they're so emotional over something, they will literally do anything. This is how you create extremism, by creating fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's called FUD. It's a propaganda technique that the media uses. That is what these people are trying to do because the ends justify the means. This has always been the goal of the far right, and more specifically of evangelicalism, of Christian extremism, to brainwash people to the best of their ability. And it's absolutely disturbing and bizarre to watch, but you know what? It's not new. We have this clip from Kent Christmas here.
You want to know why the Muslim faith has had its advancements? It's because the Muslims were willing to die for their belief. They were willing to strap bombs to their chest. They believed in the afterlife. God, give us some men and women that'll get a hold of some passion in their spirit that says, I will lay down my life for the gospel.
This clip is brand new, but they've been saying this kind of thing forever. The Trump cult, people wonder where the Trump cult came from, like if it just kind of arose out of nothing. Oh, no. The Trump cult was there even when George Bush was in power, was in authority or whatever, when he was president. The Trump cult was forming out all the way back then.
Okay, we're going to welcome Mr. President now.
Cardboard cutout of George Bush, George W. Bush, the Jr.
Well, talk to him.
By the way, this is at the Evangelical Summer Camp for Children.
Say welcome, President Bush. We're glad you're here. want you to bless him. Speak a blessing to him. Would you do that? Raise your hand to speak a blessing to him.
That is psychotic, dude.
Do some warfare over him.
Some warfare over him. They want warfare for George Bush.
Some warfare. He has surrounded himself with spirit-filled people. So pray in the spirit over him. Here he is. He's come to visit us. Yes, Lord. Thank you, Jesus.
Not for nothing, but George W. Bush, that guy, his spiritual advisor, I believe, was Ted Haggard. Now, I don't have the clips of Ted Haggard on me right now, but to my knowledge, shortly after this documentary came out, Ted Haggard got, what was it? He got caught with a male prostitute and some methamphetamine or something. Love it. Oh, I love that they get caught with this stuff. Anyway, at least he's been exposed. Bush's spiritual advisor, okay? It's been the same for like 10 years. This cult has existed this whole time. We are just now seeing somebody take the reins of control over this extremist group that's existed forever and take advantage of them. Donald Trump, he grabbed the reins of power. He saw what was there, and he grabbed it. He took control. He turned it into an extremist group, even more extreme than it was, and radicalized these people even more, if you can believe it. And now they are Trump cultists, these people that we're talking about.
I hated. She just randomly has a cardboard cutout of him and is like, "Oh, everyone, say hi to the president." That's absolutely terrible.
It is.
I hate that.
Oh, God. This is already so long, but there are so many clips to talk about, like so many funny moments.
If you, looked a few seconds before this scene right here, maybe a few seconds after, there was, quite literally, I think probably a toddler just, trying to touch his leg. It's a few seconds up.
Oh, here.
Right there. There's a toddler, touching his leg. There are other kids trying to touch him. It's a cardboard cutout, and everyone's just praising it like it's God. Like it's actually God in person.
Insane. Reminds me of that one time that Trump literally had a golden idol of himself built. Literally had a golden idol built. And these people don't seem to realize that, God does not like it in the Old Testament when you bring out golden idols. Here's another clip of Donald Trump. Like I said, I'm sorry this is so long, but there's so much to talk about. Here's a clip of one of these evangelicals, people like this, people like Becky who run this summer camp. Lance Walnut has a lot of authority, a lot of power. Has attended meetings with Donald Trump to advise him on spiritual matters.
I pray for this man. Lord, I pray you take the smell of smoke, the disappointment, the bitter.
Dude, why does everybody have a cardboard cutout of this guy? Seriously, this is weird. What is it with these people and cardboard cutouts?
The anger, the feeling of betrayal and loss. That it must be a terrible thing, Lord, to actually feel as though you've been stolen an election.
Anyway, it's just embarrassing, dude. But let me know what you think about it in the comments. And thank you again to AlphaForceZero for coming on for the guest appearance. Appreciate that.